all the way from BC. Can you guys please help me welcome James?
My name is James. I'm an addict. And once again, I'd like to thank the committee and everybody who helped put this on, and thanks to our chair. And I'm looking forward to hearing Joanne's share later also. I decided a couple of years ago that I was going to get involved in service, and I kind of put myself out there a little bit. And that's kind of how I ended up here today. I'm the delegate for the BC region. Sometimes where I come from, I got clean September 12th, 1999, and I just took 17 years. Turned 50 years old a couple weeks ago, and sometimes where I come from in a small town, that anonymity is, that's James the service guy, right? And I admire that, but sometimes I just want to be James the addict. And I get that opportunity when I travel sometimes. I get to communities all over North America. And it's special because I can go to a meeting anywhere in the world and just be James the addict. And sometimes I can do that at home also, but I have to kind of check my ego at the door and remember that when I go into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous, that's all I am, right? I'm not James the guy from work. I'm not, the union guy or the safety guy or the HR guy. I'm just an addict, right? Trying to stay clean one day at a time. And it took me a long time to figure that out. My first day clean, I ended up in a detox. 5 days later, I was going to leave. I did not want to stay there. I didn't know what I was. All I know is I couldn't stop thinking and I had this hole inside me. And this guy seen me looking out the window and he said, "Stick around, there's a Narcotics Anonymous meeting tonight. And it changed my life because I'd never heard of NA before that moment. I went to that Friday night hospital meeting, and when I got there, they read who was an addict. And for the first time, I knew what was wrong with me. And then they did the rest of the readings, and my eyes got a little bit wider. I still stared at the floor for another year. Wasn't able to share. I was 9 months clean before I was able to read in a meeting. I was terrified. Something happened probably about a couple years into recovery for me. I got to meet an addict who was heavily into hospitals and institutions, and he came up from Vancouver and did a workshop. He lives in Toronto now, Arnie, and I think he was just elected to the chair of the World Board, which is kind of cool. He kind of changed my life. I remember picking him up at the airport, and we went, I had to drive him around for 6 hours because he showed up early, and I got to talk about service work and how important that was. And he shared his story with me, and I shared my experiences with him. And something really special kind of happened at that time. One of my closest friends, we came into recovery together, Daniel, he came in about a couple of weeks before I did. And, we were like water and vinegar. We just did not get along. And our sponsors didn't want us hanging out together because we were newcomers. And for a long time, we just didn't fit. Them spiritual principles and putting the principles before everything else, we just weren't able to do it. We got under each other's skin so much. And we ended up doing this convention committee together. I think we were 6 years clean. And we both had this moment where we started looking at ourselves and started to take a look at them character defects and them shortcomings. And it probably took me 6-7 years before I was able to process that stuff. And we just started laughing at each other. We were so mad, but by the time the meeting was over, we were laughing. It was a Sunday night meeting. We read out of the works, long forms of the steps and traditions. It was our home group for 3 years. This last January was the last time I seen Daniel. He got into a car accident and was killed. And it was right a couple days before I was getting ready to leave to Penticton for a car workshop. And we got to talk about the importance of service. He didn't do areas service. He didn't do a lot of service other than helping sponsees, newcomers. He was great with those. And it was pretty special to watch that relationship because he had a way of communicating with people that were suffering, right? That was not me. I've had a lot of different sponsees. I actually have a good friend of mine. He's just took 22 years on Wednesday, and I've been sponsoring him for a few years. And we get along so well, and we do a lot of the same type of service work. But Daniel, we couldn't do that together. But we learned about the traditions and how important they are and how important they were in our lives. But yeah, the last time that I saw him we spoke for about 15 minutes, and we talked about the direction that Narcotics Anonymous is going in, and we talked about the new Guiding Principles book that's coming out. And he was excited. And I feel that passion, right, of Narcotics Anonymous and what it has to offer, a worldwide fellowship. Because for a long time I was stuck in my little bubble staring at the floor at the Friday night hospital meeting. I did that for such a long time. And then I got to meet other people who had the same passion and desires that I do. So really early in recovery, I broke out of my bubble and I started getting involved. I started learning about the traditions and the anonymity, and I started listening to anything I can get about the early days of Narcotics Anonymous. And I listened to a tape of Jimmy Kay talking about the greatest gift he'd ever received, that empathy. And I sat there, and for the first time in my life, I didn't have to explain something, right? I could feel it. The traditions kind of helped me in that part of my life. That, the steps, for a long time, the steps I really had to internalize and had to think of them. I even did this correspondence course once on chemical dependency, trying to figure myself out. I always needed to be able to understand. But that moment, I'll never forget it, because for the first time in my life, I could feel. I didn't have to explain anything. I knew how I felt. When I think about the anonymity, it doesn't matter where I am in this world, that I'm James, I'm an addict, and I could feel, and I could share that with somebody else. I wasn't able to do that for a long time, right? The obsession of everything. For a couple of years, I was doing some pretty stupid stuff in my life, and I came into recovery, and I was still doing stuff in my garage, right? I loved the lifestyle. I was addicted to the lifestyle, and I couldn't stop. My first set of steps, it probably took me about 3 years to finish it. But just when I got to step 8, I looked at my sponsor and his sponsor, and it was called Andy's Basement, and the three of us did a step group together. And there's a question where it says, "Is there anything else you'd like to tell your sponsor?" And I held on to that for a little while, right? And get to step 8, and we're just about done going into step 9, and I'm thinking about these amends that I need to make. And that's when I had to tell the two of them men what I was doing in my life. And they looked at me and they said, "Have you stopped?" And I said, "Yes." And I looked at my sponsor and he says, "Are you going to do it again?" And I said, "No." And I was crying. I was completely destroyed, I thought. But at that moment I felt unconditional love, because they said, "On to the next question." They didn't care what I was doing. All they wanted to know was if I was going to change. And the spiritual principles that I've learned through practicing the program and learning how to put the traditions into my life, I don't know where I'd be today without that. Because when I got here, I didn't want to live any longer. My life was done. I tried everything there was to stay clean. Nothing worked. The only reason I went to detox was because my wife was going to leave. She said, "You get help or I'm leaving." And I was scared to be alone. I got there, I didn't want to leave there because they were feeding me and the phone wasn't ringing. Nobody was looking for me. And I didn't want to go back to work, so I decided I was going to go to treatment. I went to this 30-day treatment center because I was scared to go back to work, because I didn't want them to know what was going on. But it was no secret. Everybody knew what was going on in my life. So my first 30 days of recovery, I had no idea about anything. I'd go stand outside in front of that Friday night hospital meeting and they'd be smoking, and I didn't have cigarettes. I'd just hang out with them, and they could tell I was hurting, and they would talk to me, and they'd say some stuff, and I would agree with them, right? And just terrified. I just wanted to fit in. So after about 60 days, I looked at one of the guys and I asked him, what does that mean? And he told me, he explained it to me. I still didn't understand, but I agreed with him anyways. My sponsor looked at me and says, James, you should get a dictionary. He whispered it to me, and it's like, I did. I had to get a dictionary, and I had to start going through the step guide to understand what the words were. I had no idea. Looking back, that was pretty easy times for me. It says in our basic text that we have to completely change our old ways. For me, it was pretty simple because I had to change everything. It wasn't until I spent a little bit more time in recovery and getting more involved in service work that I started to get in my own way and started to think, right? Because sometimes my thinking gets me in a lot of trouble. But that's where the traditions come in. They play a pretty big role in my life because I've learned to apply them into my life. Whether it's the unity from step one, or tradition one, sorry. To me, that's the most important thing there is. I had the opportunity to spend a week here in meetings, and every morning we would do a reading, and I was asked what was the most important reading in my life, and it's the service prayer. Because everything we do is for the newcomer, right? Everything I do is to help somebody else. So I remember the pain of what it was like when I got here. A year and a half ago, I was 15 years clean, and my life was falling apart. I felt almost the same way I did when I got here. And part of the problem was I wasn't applying the principles of honesty and integrity, and there was some acceptance I needed too. My ego kind of ran away with me. There was some stuff going on in my life, and I was a part of a convention committee, and our treasurer, he was like 28 years clean, and we clashed a lot because I was trying to run the convention by myself. My ego was going out of control because my personal life was falling apart. But I couldn't really tell anybody because it appeared that everything was perfect. I had a girlfriend in recovery. She was like our regional secretary. Things were perfect, right? We had the perfect life. We were going to get married. And when things were going bad, I didn't want to tell anybody. And I lived with that, right? And I started to control everything around me. And yeah, that didn't work out very good because when the relationship ended, a Saturday night lying on the couch, I knew that if I got off that couch, I would either not live that night or I'd be still using today. And that really terrified me, and that's when I had to get honest with a lot of people in my life. And I've had the same sponsor for 17 years except for 1 year, and there's this guy Lloyd, he's in my home group, and he looked at me and he said, James, go back to basic text, open it up, start at the beginning, and all the answers are there, right? So I have to completely reconstruct my life from the beginning, right? So I get up in the morning, I pray, I meditate, I journal, and I have breakfast. Like, I do some basic things every day, and I did that stuff every day for about a year. I'm not able to do 90 meetings in 90 days, but I'm able to talk to people in recovery every day. I have that ability. And I'm able to talk about how I'm feeling. Because I know that it's a progressive disease. And I know what will happen if I don't do it. Because it'll get worse, right? And I don't want to go there again. I've watched a lot of people come into this program and go back out and relapse and die. I had a brother who was in recovery on and off for a number of years, and he relapsed. He died. I was 2 years clean, and there's a lot of times in my life where I've seen that kind of stuff happen with family members. But I didn't have any spiritual principles growing up. I didn't. We didn't feel we kept it. It was a quiet life, right? I was meant to sit there and be seen and not heard. And that's the way that I grew up, so I had to learn how to live all over again. But I'm grateful today that I can go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting
All the way from BC, can you guys please help me welcome James?
My name's James. I'm an addict. And once again, I'd like to thank the committee and everybody who helped put this on, and thanks to our chair. And I'm looking forward to hearing Joanne share later also. I decided a couple of years ago that I was going to get involved in service, and I kind of put myself out there a little bit. And that's kind of how I ended up here today. I'm the delegate for the BC region. Sometimes where I come from, I got clean September 12th, 1999, and I just took 17 years. Turned 50 years old a couple weeks ago, and sometimes where I come from in a small town, that anonymity is, that's James the service guy, right? And I admire that, but sometimes I just want to be James the addict.